a visit to the Long Island Macintosh Users Group. This is MacVoices. Today's MacVoices is supported by MacVoices After Dark. What happens before the show starts and after we sign off? Informative, fun, and completely off-script conversations. That's what. MacVoices After Dark is an exclusive benefit for our Patreon subscribers. Sign up now at patreon.com/MacVoices. Welcome to MacVoices. This is the talk of the Apple community, and I'm Chuck Joyner. A few weeks ago, I was invited by the Long Island Macintosh User Group to be their featured speaker, and they allowed me to record it for sharing with you on MacVoices, so that's what we're doing this time around. As with every good user group meeting, we start out slightly scripted and then just go off on tangents all over the place depending on what the group wanted to talk about. So that's what we did, and I hope you enjoy it. As always, thanks for watching.
So welcome everyone. Thank you for coming to the October meeting. I hope everybody is well, and if anybody has friends or family down in Florida or down south, they're all healthy and safe. We can start it off by introducing our speaker, Chuck Joyner. The head of MacVoices is amongst other things, but he is a known entity in the Mac community, and he's going to share his wisdom with us tonight. And Rick, do you want to go over what the topic was for today?
That would be a good question.
Or should I kick that one over to Chuck?
Yeah, Chuck, what did I ask you to do?
That is the example of delegation, my friends. Right there.
Yeah, one
George.
On my screen, it's left, next one right, and you're the next one right.
Yeah, I like that. George to Rick to me. That's good. I've got nobody.
So hot potato.
Well, I said that we would talk about the iPhone 16.
Mm-hmm. That's right. Yep.
That's where I guess we'll start. And then, a little bit about Apple Intelligence and where that's going. And then after that, we can, just sort of riff on things that whatever you want to hear about. Or, in fact, I even have a question for you all tonight that I thought about earlier. So, but I tell you what, I'm going to do the plug up front because Rick gave me permission, so you can blame him. But I do want to mention that have just had the MacVoices website redesigned, and so it's brand new. We did not lose any content. There are a number of differences. The big one that I've been really pleased with, though, is now I have a blog on that site. So you can subscribe to the shows, or you can subscribe to the blog, or you can subscribe to both. But before, I felt like I really didn't have a place where I could answer questions that people send in. Maybe there was an offhanded comment in one of the shows, and they wanted to follow up on it. Or we end up talking about topics like music, which is something I really enjoy. And I never had a place, somebody would send something in and ask me a music question. I never had a place I could respond. So now I've got that, and I'm just slowly working my way into making it a habit to contribute to it. The other thing, pardon me, the other question that I keep getting, and note I say I get questions and I have no place to respond. I have intentionally not turned on comments on the blog because I've tried that before. I tried it again a little while ago with the old site, and I spend all my time fighting spam and the kind of ads you get for health aids and things that will help you grow hair in places you want it and help you not grow hair in places you don't want it. And it's just not worth it. I figured there are plenty of ways that people can, it's not quite as conversational, but I'd much rather spend my time creating content than trying to fight some of these idiots that are out there taking advantage of it. So if you haven't been there, check it out. I think you'll find it much more aesthetically pleasing. The old site had gotten a bit long in the tooth. Don't know how many people here might know Mike Potter, who does Macstock Conference and Expo, but he also is a web design consultant. He's the one that helped me put it together. I went to him and said, Mike, this is what I like, and this is what I want. And he said, no, that's not what you want. And so what you end up seeing is the result of a lot of discussions and occasional arguments back and forth. And I capitulated on probably about 85% of the things that I thought were a good idea. And it ended up he was right. So he's in the right business, and I clearly am not a web designer. So check that out.
Yeah. I put the link to your website in the chat.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it. So how many people have an iPhone 16? Okay, I got one. Okay, or 16, 16 Pro. I mean, the 16 line is the best way to say it.
I just got the 15 Pro Max, so I think it's a little bit soon for me.
Well,
that's what I have.
Pardon me. That's sort of the interesting thing is this worth the upgrade? And first of all, I'm on the upgrade plan. So every year I have the option to either just continue and end up buying my old phone or trade it in and just keep the payments rolling forever. Eventually I'll get caught and have to pay out. But, so I've been essentially in a lot of ways renting my phone. But it also means that, I can get it early, and given the show, I want to have the latest and greatest to be able to comment. This has been, I think, a little bit more of an upgrade than a lot of people have given it credit for, because the camera control button now is probably the biggest new thing, along with some of the lenses for the Pro. But we still are waiting on the main attraction here, and that is that this phone is supposed to be powerful enough to really drive Apple Intelligence when we get it. Now, if memory serves, they're saying that some of the first Apple Intelligence features are going to roll out the end of October, I think it is, or close to that. I'm anxious to see that and then hear from folks like you that have the 15 and lower models to see how well those features function, if they function. But I have to tell you, I've been really, really happy with this. The camera control is interesting. It's taken me a little while to get used to it. It's a change, so therefore, everybody doesn't like it, right? Anybody here shoot photos with the DSLR? Okay.
Actually, a mirrorless, but
okay,
basically the same.
So then you know what it's like to hold, just give the button a slight depress and have it, do the autofocus and all that. That's the same thing here. And what I found is that it took me a little while, and especially I'll say this, I'm left-handed. So ordinarily I would take the picture like this, but now, I would hold it like this and then tap. Well, now, in order to use the controls, notice I want to do them with my thumb, I have to hold it this way, which is not a huge tragedy, but it is what it is. That said, though, I've found that I really like the idea of being able to do those gentle zooms a little more like a DSLR, as opposed to just using the buttons on the 2x, 4x or 2x, 5x, and have it zoom in and zoom back out. I've gotten used to it because that was the best option, or the pinch and zoom. But that means then that not only am I trying to hold the phone, but I'm also trying to, touch the screen and bump it around so that the image gets jarred a little bit. And primarily, I'm talking about for video. I mean, it's not a big deal because it's still, you can do all your adjustments and then take the picture. But having that ability to do that, to adjust the zoom where I want it, is a big deal. And let's see, what are we now? About 3-4 weeks into the new phone, I guess. And, again, it's taken a little bit of getting used to, but the more I use it, the more I like it. And I feel like it is a genuine advancement. The other challenge I have is that when I get a new phone, I also get the iOS upgrade. So I tend to forget that someone who has an older phone probably has some of the same features that I've come to like. And so that's why I have a hard time separating them. I really, really like the new control center now because there's so much more there, and it's so easy to have it organized, add things, take things off. That I feel like that's been one of the biggest and nicest features I've seen with the iPhone 16. But of course, if you did the upgrade, I believe that is an iOS 18 feature, so it's not an iPhone feature. Other than that, everything works like it did. There's a lot of controversy surrounding whether the iPhone 16. Let me try that again. The difference between the iPhone 16 and the iPhone 16 Pro, if the difference in price and capabilities is worth it. I can't answer that. You have to. That's an individual thing. We were talking pre-show about what our current daily drivers are, and do you need want an iMac? Do you need a Mac Studio? What do you really need? We all want the biggest, best, baddest thing we can get, but do you honestly need it? And I feel like also I've had a couple experiences in the last couple of weeks that have really pointed out to me how Macs have become they're so much more sophisticated than when any of us started, probably. But that means they're more complex. And the amount of knowledge that we all have accumulated over the years of using them, and even if that's just 2 or 3 years, you've learned a lot that you didn't even realize that if somebody picks it up cold, wow, you can't believe that they don't know this, but they don't know it. And so, the wisdom of Apple's approach to the iPad and not letting you dig under the hood and not letting you do all the customizations and all the geeky things that a lot of us like to do with our Macs and rail against Apple because they're continuing to lock things down and make those harder to get to, or just eliminate the ability to access them at all, really plays more to the market that Apple finds itself in now, and that is people that aren't geeks and they don't want to mess around with this stuff. They just want to do something that works. And so, they don't really care if the window width is, 10 pixels versus 8 pixels, where that might make a difference to somebody here, and I'm leaving accessibility issues out of that. So I feel like you've got to go and look around and see. Right now, my main machine is an M1 MacBook Pro, and it's getting long in the tooth. I was really tempted by the M3s, and then they started talking about how quickly the M4s were going to come out, and I decided, I'll just hang on and wait, because that seems to be the one that, if Apple Intelligence even half pans out to what is being talked up as and promoted as, it's going to be a big shift. And even the older M series, may fall behind just a little bit. So I'm anxiously awaiting too to see what happens with the upcoming announcements. M4 iPad, okay, that's fine. I don't use my iPad, with the exception of some video editing, and that's more experimental than anything. I really don't use it as a serious heavy-duty production machine. So I'm fine with, well, I'm not even sure at this point how old my iPad Pro is. I mean, I bought the top of the line at the time, but it's been a good 3, 4, 5 years now, and it does everything it needed to do. So as long as all of these machines get the security upgrades where I don't feel like I'm exposing myself to any identity theft or any significant dangers, it seems to be a time to maybe put the cards against your chest and just wait and see. So George, did you? Oh, George, you just jumped. Um, did you say you have a 15 Pro Max? Okay. Yeah.
Yes, I do.
Okay. All right. How have you found iOS 18 running on it? Is it?
I haven't upgraded to 18 yet. I usually wait a little while longer before making the jump. So maybe Bradley has. I'm not sure because he has one as well.
I actually jumped further. I'm up at 18.1 beta, so I can take advantage of Apple Intelligence now.
See, and Brad, I am so sorry because I just looked up at your picture and now I see your hand went up, and I didn't with the color of your background, the hand's almost invisible. So I didn't mean to ignore you.
That's all right.
But yeah, I inevitably the 16 is faster than the 15, and those are things that are noticeable for about a week, and then it just becomes the norm. Where you really notice it, in fact, I'll tell this story real quick. But I have an original MacBook Air, an Intel MacBook Air, the first one. It still functions. It's great. I use it principally to record webinars and things that I want to do screen captures on because it's great for that, once again. But I pulled it out the other day and decided I was going to just do a full reboot. And it was painful.
Well, the early one wasn't SSD based, so it would be quite painful.
Exactly. You tend to forget it because now everything is SSD. And it was just amazing. I thought, oh my God, I remembered when this thing felt like it was lightning. And now it's go out for a pizza and come back and it'll finish rebooting.
You've been spoiled.
I've been absolutely spoiled, and I'm darn proud of it too. But so I think that's the thing with the phones. Now, Brad, you're I don't know, brave, stupid, or both. I'm not sure which, because you're running betas, and I on system software, I don't want to run betas. They scare me.
Well, I'm not running beta on the Mac. I'm running it on the phone because it's easier to go back.
It's easier, but still, I just if I had a second phone, yes, I'd love to play, but it just is not in the cards to buy a machine or a phone just to play with the beta. So I hear my friends talking about all the betas, and they follow the beta releases, and it's just like that's just so much junk as far as so much junk from a news perspective, as far as I'm concerned.
Well, in our line of work, we get asked to advise other people. So being on the cutting edge, I could play with the Apple Intelligence, say people, this is pretty cool, or it's not that big a deal. So I want to be, the pioneer and see how it goes. So my clients might ask me, should I upgrade? And the answer might be no, or it's worked out rather well. In my case, it's worked out just fine.
Yeah, and listen, I appreciate the fact that you're willing to take the arrows. I don't want to because I have other things I would rather be doing, but somebody has to do it, and so I'm delighted that people like you do, because then you can advise me, you can advise everybody here, that if it's all gone well, great, and if your phone was bricked for a week and a half or your Mac was down for 2 weeks, you can tell us that too. And then I'm going to say how smart I was not to do it. So,
well, I don't do it on the Mac because I rely on the Mac more than I rely on my phone. So that's why I play the Mac more carefully than the phone. But I did update the iPad, and that worked out reasonably well. I updated my Apple TV. I updated my watch. So, I'm as up to date as possible, and you could argue beyond possible with the phone because I've gone to the betas. But if it wasn't for the fact that you're doing this presentation, I was half expecting I'd be doing a presentation where people will be asking about Sequoia and Apple Intelligence. So I wanted to be as prepared as possible for how that works or doesn't work. But I needed to know.
Yeah, oh, absolutely, absolutely. And you bring up Sequoia, which I think is another one because I too rely on my Mac, and so I usually run a bit behind on those. I have not upgraded to Sequoia. I know a number of people who have that have had no trouble. I know Jeff Gamet has upgraded to Sequoia already, and he's been having some issues now. Whether those are because of all the other things he does with his Mac, as opposed to what normal people do, or whether it's just Sequoia, I don't know. But I'm not going to take the chance.
Well,
I'm going
Sequoia has its own set of little bugs. There's a lot of programs out there that aren't ready for Sequoia. But if you were to ask, most of the companies, are you ready for Sequoia? They probably don't have an answer. So you have one choice is to try it and see how it goes or wait. And, I have over 300 different apps that are non-Apple. So I've done my homework as best as possible. The majority do work with Sequoia. There's a few that do not, but luckily I have an external drive that I can put an earlier operating system on, and I could run those older programs that aren't ready for Sequoia. So I hedge my bet, you might say, and I could play it both ways.
Yeah.
I recently had found that if you were to install Sequoia on an external drive that's bootable, the Apple Intelligence function would not work. So I have to put Sequoia on the internal drive, and that's why I've got an earlier operating system now on my external. It used to be the other way around. The newer was on the external. But since Apple played I don't know, you could say a cruel trick on you, that they would not do Apple Intelligence externally, then you got to do what you got to do. So I flipped the game. Everything is backed up, and I switched my external Thunderbolt drive to running an older operating system to run the few programs that don't work with Sequoia. But luckily, most of my programs do. Now, I don't know how popular Quark Express is, but Quark doesn't say they've certified their latest software with Sequoia. In several weeks, they'll be releasing a new Quark Express 2025, and that will be compatible with Sequoia. That being their official policy, it seems to work anyway, and I imagine there's quite a lot of programs that are in that category. They have not been blessed by the company, but they seem to be working all the same. Now, there are some programs that only work, shall we say, partly, like, oh, it boots up and it kind of works, but if you try printing, well, then it doesn't work, stuff like that. So you have to do, I don't want to exactly say extensive, but a little bit more than cursory, experimentation to see what does and what doesn't work, because some things are supported. You might see some Sequoia updates that really aren't true, fully functional updates. They say this is a beta version and this is for Sequoia compatibility, but it's only partial Sequoia compatibility. So it's not quite there yet. So you might say you've gotten Sequoia updated. Well, the state of the art still isn't perfect.
No, you're absolutely right. And again, it's up to you all to decide what apps are mission critical for you, especially now we're talking about the Mac. But what is mission critical for you? What can't you live without for a week, 2 weeks, a month?
In my case, it would be, Mail and FileMaker Pro.
And
I need those all the time.
Yeah, and that's fair. For me, one of the big ones would be Final Cut. I mean, I can dance around mail issues and even using the phone, but Final Cut is Final Cut, and I need it. So,
well, that seems to be working.
Yeah, but you used a magic word in there in your comments, and that is backup. That I feel like backups are more important than ever, and especially as we move forward now into Apple Intelligence and all. And I know people get so tired of us constantly talking about backups. But if you, well, I had I'm a little embarrassed because I've advocated Drobos for so long, but I had a Drobo that ate about a terabyte and a half of movie files. They just were gone.
Well,
The whole
Drobo hasn't been updated for even Sonoma, so of
oh
course
oh
Sequoia would be
yeah
a major problem for anyone still hanging on to their Drobo.
yeah, but this was a network attached Drobo, so it should have been standing on its own. And
Hmm.
the point is that now I had backups of it, so it was a little inconvenient, but it wasn't the tragedy it could have been.
Right.
So, if you don't have a backup strategy, get one. Even if it's something as simple as signing up for Backblaze and just letting it run, because the system software, you can always reinstall a new copy of the OS, but you can't get back your photos, your tax records, your investment records, all those things. So forgive me if I sound preachy, but it's just please get a backup. On the phone and the iPad, depending on how you're doing it, the odds are pretty good that your information is all going up to iCloud or can go up to iCloud. But even so, something like iMazing will let you back it up to your Mac, and then you can take that off to an external drive, go stick it in a safe deposit box or something somewhere if it's important enough to you. It's not that expensive. You can buy these ridiculously large drives now and keep your information safe.
You could say
Why?
mine's ridiculous. It's about 20 terabytes.
Yeah, exactly. And it's not that expensive anymore. That used to be the purview of nation states. And
Sure.
now you can put it on your desk. So, it's an interesting. It's going to be interesting to see when Apple Intelligence finally lands for everyone, just how how everyone uses it. But we've had this discussion on the shows a couple times that Apple Apple has not talked a lot about Apple Intelligence, but it's been doing a lot of things in the machine learning and AI space that they just never really said anything about it being that. They just talked about the features. Jason Snell and I just did an interview about his new book, Take Control of Photos. And he pointed out all the things that Apple has done with photos that are AI/machine intelligence kind of things, where you can do queries to your photos now. All that information has been analyzed because they're probably sitting up on Apple servers, so that if Rick was in my photos, and I'd identified him for a few times, I could say, I want to see a picture of Rick, and it'll show me all the pictures of Rick. I might be able to say, I want to see a picture of Rick, with the lake in the background, and it probably will pull up what you're seeing there now. That's
Well, that's the new Apple Intelligence feature. The
right.
face detection and naming, and that it was in fact artificial intelligence. Apple just didn't call it that. But of
Exactly.
course, we've had the face function, for quite a long time, and it's sometimes rather surprising. Like you show it a picture of somebody who's an adult, and it figures out, here's a baby picture of that same person, and it rightly identifies that's the person because the shape of their face has not changed.
Yeah, and again, the point is that we've been using some of this stuff already all along. It just was never called AI or GPT or whatever the term you prefer.
Right.
It's there. We've all been enjoying the benefits of it. The ability to do certain searches on your Mac, it borders on some of this. So it's not the brave new world in some ways that people think it is. That said, there are certainly things out there, and I firmly believe there are more coming from Apple that are part of the brave new world that we have not had access to before. So I find it to be a very exciting time, and I just the biggest trick for me, and at least in my opinion, is learning how to think about using these things. Because once you learn how to think about it, it's truly amazing what you can do.
Well, not to mention Apple's implementation of artificial intelligence. I don't want to say Apple intelligence because I'm trying to use a more generic term, but the actual Apple intelligence implementation is rather unique. It's not just search like what Microsoft might be doing. It's part of the operating system, and you'll find new program generations that will take advantage of that functionality. So you might see more of that embedded in your favorite program. Like I mentioned, FileMaker Pro. They might be more artificial intelligence, in the next generation of FileMaker Pro for more advanced searches that aren't available currently. And numerous other things will get the artificial intelligence or Apple intelligence benefits in the near future. Right now, Apple talks about, photos will add some new functionality, and that's nice. But they don't really talk about pages besides summary, but there should be a bunch of other things that you'll get. You'll probably see an updated keynote with more artificial intelligence functionality where it might guess what you want and have some interesting new template functionality that should be rather nice. It just opens the doors to, take advantage of many more ways that artificial intelligence / Apple intelligence can benefit so many different programs. We're only getting a little taste of it now.
And the trick, I think, is going to be learning how to think about it. Marty Gensius, who does the Vision Profiles podcast, was a speaker at MacStock this year, and he took us through a couple of his projects where he gave us basically a script as in not a programming script, but a literal script of tell ChatGPT that this is what I want you to be for me. I want you to develop a plan for me. And his example was, I want you to develop a plan for me to learn Final Cut Pro. Mm-hmm. And I just simplified it greatly. Okay. So, but he showed us then the output after giving it a certain amount of information. What it gave back to him was staggering. And something that I've learned from him subsequently is that it's not just a matter of, say, I need to have a speech written for me for, LIMAC on Friday night. Okay, that's great. It'll give me a speech. But I need to be a bit more specific. I need to give it more examples. How many people are there going to be? What kind of topics are they interested in? What's the age group? All of those things. It's amazing how they can change what comes out. And those are the kind of things we're going to have to learn. And you can be playing with a lot of this stuff now. As much as it pains me to say it, if you open Microsoft Edge, you can have free access to GPT-4 in there and play with some things there. And I would encourage everyone to do it. Go back to the days when, and I think most of the people here probably were there at some point when computers, by today's standards, small computers started to work their way into offices, and people were so afraid to touch them because I might break something. And sure. you can't break anything. The most you can do is get garbage results, and you just start over.
I don't know. I've seen people break their computers.
Well, I don't think they were worried as physically about it. I know, in fact, I distinctly remember having a discussion with one lady who she had a wealth of knowledge in her area, and she retired early because she just couldn't get past the idea that she might do something wrong. I don't know if she thought she was going to launch the missiles or what, but she just could not get past the idea. And I've always felt sorry for people like that because I'm with Brad. I like to experiment too. Unfortunately, we've all gotten a little older and have a few more responsibilities, and I don't have as much time to just play around. But I'm making time to play with ChatGPT because I want to learn how to think about some of this stuff. You all probably remember Guy Kawasaki.
Sure.
Okay. I don't know if you listened to his podcast, Remarkable People. But in the last couple episodes, he's been talking with different guests about how he and his team have created Kawasaki GPT. how they have taken an AI model and trained it on all of the interviews he's done, a lot of the articles he's written and everything, so that now they can query Kawasaki GPT to the point and get something that sounds like it would have come from Guy Kawasaki had you taken him out to lunch and asked him the question. Which, if you think about that, that's fascinating. And one of his guests also had done something even a bit more sophisticated. So there are all these people out there that are doing early stage things that are fascinating. And I really want you to be part of it because I want to be part of it. I think it's going to be potentially extremely revolutionary. And I don't think I'm one of those like, oh, I hate to invoke Elon Musk's name because that can be so inflammatory. But there are people out there that really do see different kinds of futures. Sam Altman's another one. Some people think he's a snake oil salesman. I look at him and say, well, yeah, okay, maybe to some extent. But on the other hand, the one thing you can't argue with is the effect that ChatGPT has had on our world. And already, especially in my world, in the business world, it's everyone's trying to figure out better ways to use these tools. The lawyers are holding us all back because of some of the issues there. But people are sort of like the old days of bring your own device, and that's how Macs and the iPhones kind of snuck in the back door at companies. I feel like that's the way some of this stuff is going to sneak into companies, whether the lawyers can hold them back or not. They want to hold them back. They're going to use it.
Well, this brings us to the use of what used to be called expert systems. You were saying if it sounds like Guy Kawasaki, that's basically distilling his knowledge into an artificial intelligence. I like to be reminded of the old, imagine most people have remembered the Knowledge Navigator video. This was a concept that Apple had many, many years ago. And to a greater extent, this is coming true. Not all of it, but more and more.
Yeah, but you know what, Brad? The more I see it, I mean, you're seeing people created now. I just got an ad for a headshot company. You send them a bunch of headshots of you in different settings with different dress on and all that, and they will build you an AI oriented headshot that is perfect for your resume. So it's a picture of you that was never taken, but it looks exactly like you with all the lighting right, all the shadings right, everything is perfect. And it's like, how much farther is it from that to, building real artificial actors or
do you remember the TV series and the movie Max Headroom?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so that's a lot like that.
Yeah.
An artificial person.
Absolutely. Okay, so let's have a little fun here. If we go back, I'll challenge some of the more senior members of the group here. Of course, that's not me, but does anybody remember Colossus, the Forbin Project movie? Okay,
oh, that goes back a long ways. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I see a hand. Okay. Do you remember the movie Looker with Susan Day? Okay.
I don't remember that one.
Look up Looker because it had to do with eye tracking and creating basically, I don't want to spoil anything here, so I'll leave it at the idea that some of what they postulated as science fiction that you thought, yeah, okay, fine. We're here. It's happening. You go back and look at some of the old science fiction things, and it's like, oh my God, we really are at that point. And in a lot of cases, we've exceeded it. So I get really excited about it because all I see is endless possibilities of tools that I can do things with, which has always been the thing that pulled me to the Mac. And that the Mac was always, I took Steve Jobs' comments to heart. It was a bicycle for the mind. It amplified my ability to do things, in some cases accomplish things that I could never have accomplished on my own. And now we're about to take that and, kick it into warp drive.
Well, we all know where the idea for cell phones, flip phones, came from, the Star Trek communicator.
Yep.
If you stick
Yep.
with that genre, if you look at an old episode of Star Trek The Next Generation, what did they walk around with? They call it a pad, long before there was such a thing as an iPad or any other tablet existed.
Yep.
Okay, we don't have transporters, but they're working on warp drives and all kinds of things.
Well, and look at what we're doing now. I mean, can you imagine what this would have been like when all of us bought our first Macs? What could we have understood that you are on Long Island, I'm in Pennsylvania, but it doesn't matter. I could be in Taiwan and we could be having this discussion.
Sure.
I just had a meeting this morning with some folks in Ukraine, software developers in Ukraine. And other than the fact that it was my morning and their afternoon, so we couldn't really compare who had which meal, it made no difference where we were. And
Nikola Tesla
that's crazy.
Envisioned everybody would be talking and whatnot, communicating with little pocket-sized devices decades ago, long before there was an internet and cell phones.
Yeah.
He envisioned the internet and whatnot. It's a miracle that he could foresee such a thing. It would be incomprehensible to even think along those lines back then. But he said, yeah, we're going to do that. It's like he was told by some aliens, I don't know, this is what's going to be happening in 50 years.
And, some of you probably are thinking, what are they talking about? We're so far off track.
Sorry.
No, because I don't think we are. I think that we're technologists of some stripe. We just see the technology through an Apple lens. That's always been my consideration of it. So the people that just want to talk about how do I install a new font, I think you're kind of missing the point. Our Macs, our iPads, our iPhones, all the Apple devices are a window into this larger world of technology that did not exist for most people until, I don't know what, the 80s, 90s maybe. But we were all into it and I've just the fact that somebody held their hand up on the Colossus of Orban project, we were all paying attention to science fiction long before that and wanting some of these things. And now we've got them. So, if I had my way, I would tell you to take your machines, do what you want with them, but also look beyond it and start seeing, how much more you can do with it. No matter what that is, whether it's photography or screenwriting or art or business, whatever. It can go so much farther.
Back in, I think it was 84, maybe 85, one of the popular books that was available for the Mac was The Mac is Not a Typewriter. Because that's what people had an appreciation for. And they were doing, spacing twice after a period, because that's what they were taught as a, typewriter. This is how you did it. Now, of course, we have proportional fonts, and you don't supposed to do that. You look at an actual book where they have proportional fonts, and it's not done that way. A lot of people just have some bad habits, or at least they did have bad habits.
This may, and I hope I don't want to offend anybody that is listening to this now or afterwards, but think about how revolutionary desktop publishing was with the Mac when it came out. And now all of a sudden, I don't know about you, but I haven't designed anything for a piece of paper in a long time. For a website, yes. Put it into a PDF, absolutely. But to actually print something out, hard copy, the way that all of our groups used to do newsletters, we all learned page layout at some point. We all learned desktop publishing at some point. Yes, that took us to where we are now, where we're using those skills in a different medium. But it used to be a big deal. You had a laser writer, you had a color printer of some kind. Well, unless you're a real photo enthusiast at this point, I'm not sure that a color printer, it makes good economic sense. I've
Well,
got
I'm
a little.
screwed. I've got a color laser printer, and I used it in InDesign just okay, maybe not yesterday, the day before. I still do that kind of stuff.
Yeah, that's great. Sorry, ma'am.
No, I said I did the same thing.
Okay, great. Then then maybe I'm the edge case. But but I have to ask both of you, what did you print out? What did you need a printer for, or what did you need to design for a piece of paper?
I made up think of it as a medicine chart for somebody to keep track of the dosage of insulin that they were supposed to be taking during the day. So, the doctor had said if you have a blood sugar level of X, Y, and Z, you should take this much insulin. So there was a little table. So I made up a little thing about the size of a business card that they could keep in their little case that included the diabetes, the blood sugar meter, and whatnot. So they would have that. Granted, it wasn't a fancy little project, but
Yeah.
it did a little something, and I had some reverse type, made it interesting looking, So I did that, and of course, you got to pay attention when the paper that I was using is a heavy stock glossy, and it's glossy on one side. So you have to kind of remember, when you're putting it into the printer, exactly, which end is up. So it's like, okay. And of course, God forbid it actually says this end up. It has a little icon, and you got to remember what the hell is this or not. So it's like, well, I tried it one way, turned out, nope, it was wrong. It goes the other way.
You wasted the wasting. How about you, man? What did you design?
Well, I did something similar as Brad did with my husband's medicines. He had so many, I color coded them and what time he had to take and everything else. The doctors actually took screenshots of my chart because they never saw anything. But, sometimes I design T-shirts for, like different organizations, or my grandson's a teacher, so he always wanted these T-shirts. But I can't use the laser printer for that. I have to use my inkjet because it'll melt the transfer things. But, and then I do some freelance stuff as far as like doing some ads and stuff. They do have like children's magazines and things still, like in the stores, they have them on the shelves, different little magazines that people pick up there.
Okay.
I used to work for Newsday, and I did all their stuff that was printed, but they downsized a lot now. Well, you don't know Newsday because you're from, what'd you say, Pennsylvania?
Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a local newspaper.
There's a similar kind of thing happening in photography. I take a lot of photos. I have printed a handful of them. Where are the rest of them? They're on the web. They're on my my website for people to look at there. Somebody wants to talk about a photo, I can bring it up from the computer. I'm a member of a photo group that when we talk about our photos, we don't bring in physical photos. We bring in a USB stick with a bunch of photos on it, put it into the computer, and it goes up on a big screen, and you talk about them there. So printing is something in photography that's kind of sort of taken a back seat to all electronic.
Yeah. Jeffrey?
Well, as a teacher, I ran a high-speed black and white laser printer and a color printer, inkjet printer, and I use it to create the materials that for my students. Beginning with, we created a curriculum and had actually the students input the material. If they came, the first ones who came to class, got in the door, they were allowed to use the keyboard, and they would type in the stuff that we had created and handwritten. The bottom line was when we submitted it, the Metropolitan Life Foundation rated our curriculum as one of the top 35 in the country. And we were getting letters from Belle Plains, Kansas, Massachusetts, a place called Soldotna, AK. Turned out that was Alaska. They wanted to know what we did, and so we sent them copies of it. But we created a lot of stuff using both printers.
Mm-hmm. Oh, at the time, it was incredibly important, and I have been doing a terrible job in paying attention to the chat here because Don has been throwing in different comments, and I've been ignoring them. Don, I'm so sorry. I see that you have there about postcards printed on a dot matrix image rater, pin fed for the LIMAC meeting announcements. Yep, I remember that pin feed paper. Tearing those things off was always such a pain. 1974 book, Dream Machines by Ted Nelson. Don't know that one, but I do know Stephen Levy's Hackers was one that brought back a lot of memories. And then George, I see in the chat, says he put in a link to the Colossus of Orbit project. Yeah.
You might find it of some interest. Someone recently asked, they had a problem where they have a laptop and they said their external disk drive, DVD burner, was no longer used, was not found. And I said, well, I hadn't tried mine, but I've got Sequoia, and I started up and I figured, okay, let's try Toast. Toast found it. NCH's Express Burn found it. But I figured, okay, well, maybe, you need special software, and Apple gave up on drives. But no, I stuck in a blank CD. It showed up on the desktop. I put some stuff on it. I dragged it towards the trash. It became a custom icon, not the ancient icon, but still a burn icon. And it did what it's supposed to. So it might be his connection, or maybe it doesn't like his particular drive. But in general, Sequoia still supports, optical drives. So I said he's going to have to take a closer look at his connections. But it does, in fact, still work. So you might think optical discs, that's pretty vintage, but they're still supported. Granted, Apple stopped shipping their USB super drive. And if you look at the latest, a few latest generations of, let's say, Final Cut Pro, they took out the ability to burn a Blu-ray or a DVD because they figured people aren't doing that anymore, and they aren't really supporting it with a physical drive anymore. But it still works, in the operating system. So if you need to burn a data disk or something, it still works. And I bet you if I dug up my USB floppy disk drive, it would probably still work. It didn't need any software driver. Just plug it in, it saw it, and it works. So, it's rather amazing when you're running latest software, but some ancient stuff still works.
But I had to look it up because I was afraid my memory lights just went crazy on me. I mean,
whoop, they're definitely going crazy on you.
Resetting, hopefully. There we go. I just had to look it up as Brad was talking. A standard CD can hold up to 700 megabytes of data.
That's right. 650 was the old standard. 700 was the new standard.
Right. So, and a dual layer could hold up to 8.5 gigs.
That's a data. DVD, yes.
Yeah. So I would venture to guess that, Rick, you probably have photos, depending on which camera you're using, that are bigger than 700 megabytes. So you had one photo would not fit on a DVD or on a CD.
Yeah, definitely.
Isn't that a little scary?
Well, especially when you consider a modern iPhone at 48 megapixel, that's a pretty large file, especially uncompressed. If you were to save it as a TIFF for argument's sake, or PSD Photoshop file, your typical JPEGs are compressed, but a RAW or TIFF or PSDs can be pretty large. We used to say 12 megapixel was as good as you got on an iPhone. If you wanted something better, you needed a professional, camera of some sort, mirrorless or traditional DSLR. But now we're doing 48, and 48 megapixel is really quite good amongst, even professional digital SLRs. So an iPhone, granted, it doesn't have great zoom functionality, but it does a really respectable job when it comes to resolution.
Mm-hmm. Rick, what when you shoot with something, do you shoot raw, and how big are your images?
Yes, I shoot raw all the time, and right off the top of my head, I can't tell you, but they're usually in excess of 30 to 50 megabytes. And
Yep.
if you do any work on them, depending on, as Brad said, if you then export as a TIFF, they seem to balloon from there. But I mean, most of the time, after working on them, exporting them as a JPEG is the normal thing, and they're nowhere near that size. My storage drives are only a couple of gigs each for photos and for backups. So I mean, I've taken a lot of pictures, and I've thrown a lot away too. So I mean, I'm not keeping everything. But yeah, my camera will take a 48, almost a 48, 48 meg picture.
Yeah. And you start getting into video, and then it just gets obscene.
Oh, yeah.
So,
yeah.
Especially with a new iPhone 16 Pro, it can do 4K at 120 hertz. That's a pretty large file. But if you need it, you need it.
I've tried it. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
It's stunning how good it looks. And, but here we go. You have to have the hardware to edit it with. And you can do a lot on the phone, but there's still, I personally find the iPad and the Mac easier to do significant editing on. So, time for me to ask you all a question. We just finished off Amazon Prime Day. What is your most recent tech-oriented purchase, excluding Apple specific products, because those are sort of obvious?
I bought these little $20 Bluetooth earbuds.
Okay, whose are they, Brad?
It's a company called Cloud Nest. It's actually, I could hardly pronounce it, DAOMIM. But it's like I did want to spend, I could have spent $169, which or 168, which is a good deal for an Apple's AirPods Pro 2. But frankly, I don't need them. So it's like, I don't want to spend that kind of money. But I figured this little guy has I don't know if you can see, it's got a little digital display. It does some pretty cool things. And for $20, I said, I could be a sport and do that. And the other thing that was, it's hardly technically, but it is, I bought I think it was a $2 or $3.99 USB mouse. Every so often I'm doing working on somebody's machine, and I need a mouse, and I have an ancient, the hockey puck mouse that came with the iMac G3, and a little plastic, I'm not even sure what you call it. It's a little plastic thing that holds the mouse, so you hold it normally as opposed to, God knows, sideways. And it's like, well, that's kind of lame, and it doesn't offer a scrolling. So this was a Microtech, not Microtech. Anyway, it's just a cheap mouse, and it does the trick. It scrolls. You got the left and the right, and it does the trick. So for next to nothing, I could be a sport, to get that. But I didn't.
What was the name of it, Bradley?
Which one? The earbuds or the mouse?
No, the mouse.
Oh, it was it's downstairs. If you want, I can dig it up. I think it was a Logitech MX100.
Yeah,
it's nothing fancy, but it does the trick.
Well, my Apple, my Magic Mouse here died on me, so I found an old one with wired one. So I've been using that, but it doesn't scroll. So maybe this would be good.
Well, since it was on sale, it's like, well, why the heck not?
Yeah. Logitech does some good stuff.
And
Jeffrey?
and at that price, it's like, well, why the hell not?
Yeah.
I just ordered a Surefire Minimus. It's a headlamp. I'm somewhat sight disadvantaged, so I have to read large print. It's got to be bright. I went to the Surefire site. It was $249. I went to Amazon. I've been trying to avoid Amazon. It was 170 some dollars. So I went with the Amazon because it's Amazon Prime and it was ship free.
Yeah. Amazon is your friend, Jeffrey.
Yeah, I'm afraid how big that and invasive that friend is becoming.
Well, there is that. Michael, how about you? I see your hand raised.
Oh yeah, hi everybody. Hey Chuck, welcome.
Thank you.
Hey Chuck, you were asking what we bought on Amazon Prime. Well, I bought it. Didn't get a chance to use it yet, but for $12, I think it's pretty neat. It's about an inch in diameter, maybe a half inch, tall. It's a little Bluetooth speaker. It's called LEICEX. I guess it's LASIX or LISEX. And I'm waiting to try this. It looks like it's pretty neat. And I saw I checked it out online. It gives a very robust sound, so I can't wait. I thought it was worth a try. $12.
Yeah.
Amazon.
Yeah. Okay, cool.
ICX. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Oh, they come in colors. I chose black.
Of course. Don, you were holding up things. I couldn't tell what they were. And you're still muted.
The MacBook Pro I mentioned in the chat is about 3 years old now, and I use a adapter that will let me use my wired mouse. So I haven't spent any money on batteries for mice. I put up with the inconvenience of just having a wired mouse.
Me too.
So that was fun. And I think an early post of mine here was printing from this MacBook Pro for the first time directly. And the way I did it was with a C to USB adapter. And I went to my old laser printer, plugged it in. The machine said, do you want to allow this connection? I said, yes. It came up with a message it was setting up. And then I said, print, and I got a print. So I enjoyed that very much.
Yeah, that's another thing that's changed a lot is just accessing printers the way you used to have to, download the drivers and jump through all the hoops. And so much of that has been eliminated. And Brad, I see you put it's the Logitech B100 optical USB mouse.
Yeah, this was the cheap mouse that I bought
For $3.99.
Yeah.
Oh, can't beat that.
Holy
That's
cow.
exactly it. Do I really need it? Technically, no, but hell, for $3.99, I can be a sport.
Was that in the chat?
Yeah.
I have a neighbor who says the only way you could beat that is with a stick.
That's right.
That's yeah. I'm not a mouse person. I'm a trackpad. I have never used a mouse. The very first. I know. Don't hit me. The very first peripheral I bought for my first Mac was a trackball, and when the trackpads came out, I never looked back because there's something about a mouse that first of all, I have a bad habit of not having a sufficiently clean area on my desk to move a mouse around. So, but with a trackpad or a trackball, I can just designate those few square inches, and I'm good. So,
actually, I never. Well, I've adopted multiple ones, but my main pointing device is not a mouse, but a Kensington Expert mouse, which is the big trackball. The billiard ball size job.
Love that.
You've got 3 monitors behind you, which would be even worse. I normally rock 2 monitors. So a mouse would be really challenging to take care of that real estate, dragging something from way over there, way over here. Whereas a trackpad, perhaps less so, but the trackball is rather very good for that kind of work.
Yeah, and Brad, I just feel the need to correct you. They're
Yeah.
actually 5.
I see. Oh, I see. Well, you get the laptop.
Yeah, the laptop.
So that would be 4. So where's the 5th?
So let's see. Where's the 5th?
Oh, is that way up top?
Oh, yes. There's one. Yes, there's one up above. Yeah.
Oh, I wasn't sure what that was. Okay, yeah.
So yeah, it's pathetic, but
Well, if you need it, you need it.
Yeah. Well, we were talking about this pre-show, but I've just found that I've for decades I said we would never be able to go paperless until our monitors became the size of our desks, and now that has happened. I still can't get rid of all the paper, but I've gotten rid of a lot of it because I don't need it anymore.
Probably a dumb question. Now it might be a mirroring of the video, but isn't your left speaker the one with the controls, and shouldn't that be the right? And they're sideways. Aren't those speakers usually supposed to be with the tweeter up, not out?
I tried them that way. First of all, they weren't as stable because I have them up, but also the people at Audio Engine didn't seem to have a problem with it.
Okay. Because usually when you have a pair of powered speakers like that, the right is the one with the controls and the left is the, shall we say, dumb one.
Yeah.
Is it reversed, or am I just seeing it reversed?
I think you're seeing it reversed because I mean, that's the easiest way to tell is what's supposed to be in the left speaker is coming out of the left speaker, comes out of the left speaker.
Easy enough to test that. Sure.
Yeah. So.
Okay, never mind.
That's
that's the way I'm looking at it, and I have to assume.
Yeah, but I'll tell you what, I will do an advertisement if you don't mind spending just a little bit of money. Those are the Audio Engine A5 pluses, and they are the way to go because you have Bluetooth connections. You also have hardwired connections. Feed them into an audio DAC, and Apple Music just sounds absolutely amazing. And they're just not that expensive, and you can spend a lot more money on speakers. And I've shelved all my other speakers except for my little portable ones that get carried around because I spend most of my time at the desk, and they're just phenomenal.
I'm rather happy with my Klipsch Pro Media 2.1 speakers. It's a 2.1 setup. And they're pretty powerful. They do a rather nice job. They're not particularly cheap, but they're far more expensive.
Yeah. And I also have a sub for these too. I wasn't going to bring that up.
Okay.
But anybody else score anything? And I don't care if you bought it from Amazon, but I'm more interested in just what your most recent tech purchases have been. If there's anything big or impressive that where you're spending your money at this point.
My color laser was fairly expensive, but I bought it before that event.
Yeah,
it's a Canon all-in-one color laser.
I will mention that head lamp that I bought. It was another advantage to using Amazon rather than buying it directly from Surefire. Whenever I make a purchase from Surefire, the credit card people call me within 10 minutes to verify. Surefire's catalog also has in it silencers and flash suppressors. It's evidently a company that is a toy catalog for the kind of people who cause coronaries just by showing up on the scene.
Isn't that you?
I'm at the opposite.
Well, he's on somebody's list now. That's for darn sure.
Well, that's what my brother-in-law, who's NYPD, told me. He chuckled when he saw the catalog, and he said, Yeah, you're on somebody's list.
Mm, mm.
I would add, I'm
oh,
sorry.
No, go ahead, Rick. Sorry.
I was thinking when
right.
I upgraded to Sequoia, I have three printers, and the Canon was AirPrint. I have an HP all-in-one that's AirPrint, but I have a fairly old Epson. It's the Artisan 50 printer. It letter legal, but 6-color, and it's not AirPrint, but it still seems to work just fine under Sequoia, which I was rather happily surprised about that. I hadn't anticipated that it would, but it still works. So I'm rather happy that some old stuff still does what it should.
What questions
Well,
do you all have?
I purchased on eBay an old, well, I guess old Polaroid land camera, the one that like opens up from horizontal.
The SX70, that kind of.
Yeah, it's like 70, and it actually works.
Wow.
You just got to find the film. That's the problem.
Yeah.
Actually, there's a growing, I'm not sure what I would call it, re-interest in those.
Oh, there's a huge re-interest in those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Along with vinyl and so many things that are the retro people seem to be fascinated by.
Yeah, but you don't see people going after 8-tracks, but vinyl seems to be making a comeback.
And cassettes
At our
too.
last church fair,
Cassettes a little bit, yeah.
we did have a number of people ask for 8-tracks
Really?
specifically. I think these are car people.
Oh, yeah. They never seem to be popular, shall we say, at home, but they seem to have a little following in the car. Of course, years ago.
Yeah, never quite understood that. I never cared for the 8-tracks. But
Larry Decker had his hand up, but he may have given up.
I'm sorry.
Larry, you have a question or something?
No, I really didn't give up. My recent purchases have been accessories to complement my new M2 Pro Mini and Studio display, while still trying to keep all of my old equipment functioning and active in some role. But I did replace an old Netgear 8-port gigabyte switch, which was 20 years old, with a new one. Figured it could probably handle current traffic better than one that had been doing it for 20 years. And then the powered dock that I bought was an OWC 5-port Thunderbolt 4. And I only did that because I kept my old Thunderbolt 2 dock with my old Mini, which I'm using as a media server. So it's been kind of fun going through the transition of finding ways to keep my old equipment in a useful functionality and still keep all this new stuff running, and hopefully not bringing too much detritus to the new equipment when I migrated from the old.
Not that I would complain about your choice of an OWC dock, but why did you pick that over, let's say, a CalDigit dock?
Because I already had an OWC Thunderbolt 2.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And besides, the 2 was given to me by somebody else. So
No,
Price point.
I couldn't complain. It just, if I was shopping, there's lots of quality brands out there.
Very true. I did shop Amazon extensively, and I kept returning back to the OWC just because I was more familiar with it.
Oh, they're very reliable. They're very smart people there. There's no reason not to. It just, like I said, if I was shopping, I'd be looking at OWC as well. But I know other people who have CalDigit and they're quite happy with theirs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In regard to the mice and issue, I run a Logitech Anywhere MX Anywhere 3, and then I have a Logitech mini key. The advantage of both of those devices is they can be hot swappable between different devices. So all I have to do is turn the mouse over, click a button on the bottom of it, and it becomes the mouse for the media center machine, media server. Or I can switch back there. Same thing with the keyboard. So they're a little more expensive than the base level, not $399 at all. The mouse is originally was around $70, but instead of trying to have a keyboard switch or anything like that, it's easier to have it built into the device.
Larry, I have to ask, what media server are you running? What software?
Oh, no, I'm sorry. My media server is my old 2014 Mini that I decided to resurrect after I transferred everything off of it to the new M2 Pro. Then I wiped it clean, reinstalled an operating system. I actually run an OCLP hack on it so that it is running Sonoma
No, but are
right
you
now.
running
But
Plex or something like that to work it as a media server?
yes, yeah.
Hmm.
Plex, I still have my Apple CD DVD drive, but I've been having trouble getting a successful, I'm not sure what you call it, burn off of the CDs or DVDs that I have.
What
So
brand
that's,
media do you use? I find Verbatim works rather well.
well, no, I'm talking about commercial stuff like, say, for instance, Kelly's Heroes.
Oh, I mean, using it to rip.
Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, well, then it just might be a question of a dirty lens.
Possibly it's been around for quite a while, but I'm not quite sure how to clean the lens in it.
The usual
Because,
thing is one of two choices, a can of compressed air, or they have a
yep,
special disc lens cleaner, which is basically a regular CD with a teeny tiny little like pipe cleaner attached to it, and that
right.
cleans your lens.
I'll have to look into that. I think I had some of those things, but 2 years ago or a year and a half ago now, I moved from Oregon to New York, and a lot of stuff I brought with me, a lot of stuff I didn't. So,
Um, ripping software, what, Handbrake?
that's primarily what I'm using, but I got frustrated with it because of probably the dirty lens. And I went ahead and went to Mac DVS and bought a version of it, but didn't have any more luck with it. More of it was just my frustration with trying to understand why out of the box it didn't work like perfect. And then when it didn't, then what do I have to do to make it work?
Right.
Anyone use DVD Fab?
No, I looked at it, but
It's not cheap, but it's well, they have different, shall we say, flavors of it that do all kinds of interesting processing and ripping.
I mean, for what it's worth, before you spend much money trying to resurrect anything, if you do a quick search, I just did on Amazon, or just in general, I just did a Google search, and there's an external DVD drive on Amazon for $19.99. So they're not as expensive as they used to be.
Oh yeah, if it's too much trouble and it's not working, just toss it and get one of those.
Yeah, I mean, because if you want a name brand, you'll pay a little more, but still.
well, yeah, but if you've got a good original Apple product, who tosses those?
If it's working, the problem with that is it uses up more power than a lot of USB ports support. So you see a lot of other brands either having two USB connections or it relies on a separate AC adapter or DC adapter, I guess you'd call it, because the SuperDrive plays a trick with the USB port it plugs into to extract more power than normally is available. So it'll work directly plugged into a Mac, but it won't work plugged into, let's say, a USB hub. If you have Apple's USB-C to USB-A adapter, that would still work. Okay.
Yeah. Well, actually, I've been running this drive connected to the USB port with a to C adapter on the back of the studio display, which is technically a hub.
Yeah.
So I should probably take it off and connect it to the back of the new Mini and see
That would
if
probably be better. Yeah.
it improves
at least-
my results.
Yeah,
Give it at least a
start.
try anyway.
Yeah, at least that's a place to start.
So, well, the other thing besides those ideas, things that I had bought that I've been finding extremely useful is these very small little USB-A to USB-C adapters. That's
That
all
looks
they
like the
do.
Ugreen one that I recommended. Mhm.
Now this one's a different one, but I do have a Ugreen also. So
That's all right.
I actually had to get those because I bought a 24 Toyota vehicle and there are no USB-A ports in the vehicle at all.
Interesting.
And so many of my cables were USB-A, so I had to find a way to circumvent that.
I've got a 2024 Lexus and it's got one of each, USB-C and USB-A.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well,
I've got so many of those adapters around. I mean, I almost have like a popcorn bag full of them because they're so useful to move back and forth.
Yeah.
Then the other version is the same sort of thing, but I think it's Cable Creations or Cable Matters make a line of adapters USB-C to USB-C, where instead of plugging in at a 90-degree angle straight in, they plug in and then turn it down right angle so that you have less twisting of the cable to attach. And there are several flavors of those that are very helpful.
I bought something recently you might find of interest. Can you see this?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, pluggable.
Yeah, this is a little meter that shows you, let's say you're plugging in a USB-C to USB-C cable, USB to Lightning or whatever, and it has a little display. It's not on at the moment, but let's say you're plugging in something and it's not really charging your computer or your phone properly. This thing will show you how many amps it actually is delivering. The problem with USB-C is there's no rules about labeling them, and you might find you've got a cable and it's not doing what you think it should because it's basically unlabeled. You don't know what it's supposed to do. So this thing will tell you what it's actually doing.
Well,
so it's a diagnostic tool, and
cables
this was like $20.
Can be a problem. I've got a problem right now because I'm using my old 27-inch Thunderbolt display as the extended display in the studio as the main display. Okay.
Already.
Whenever I log out, go to sleep, whatever, and then start the machine back up, the login screen initially starts on the studio display, but ends up on the extended display.
Okay.
And I haven't been able to, I feel that that's not proper. The login ought to be on the main display.
Why? And the problem, Okay, I have two displays. The secondary display, which I don't always use, is plugged into the HDMI port. And if I was to start up, it would show the login, the picker and the Apple logo and the progress bar.
Yeah.
My other monitor, which I'm using at the moment, is plugged in via USB-C. It's a USB-C to display port. That's really neither here nor there, but that's how it goes. The Mac Mini will use the HDMI as your main monitor or primary monitor if you let it. So while my machine starts up, and if I don't have the other monitor on, it still does what it's supposed to, and it uses the monitor that is in use. But if I was, let's say, installing an upgrade to the operating system and I want to follow it along, I'll turn the other monitor on because that's what it likes to show. So
Yeah.
despite the fact that it's not what I call the main monitor where the menu bar is, and the dock, it does what it wants to because that's the way the hardware works. It wants to use the HDMI as the first monitor.
No, both of these, the M2 Pro Mini has four USB-C ports on the back.
Yeah.
Starting from the Ethernet port, there would be port 1, 2, 3, 4.
Yes.
Okay, so I used the USB-C cable that came with the studio display.
Already.
Went from the powered port on the back of the display. There's only one that is USB-C 4. The other four are just power ports or whatever.
Already.
It went into port 1 on the back of the Mini.
Mm-hmm.
Port 2 was a USB-C to Mini DisplayPort adapter using a Thunderbolt 2 cable to the Thunderbolt display. So they're both running USB-C to Thunderbolt.
Is there anything plugged into the HDMI?
No,
Okay.
not using HDMI at all.
What if you were to flip the connections?
That didn't work. My current solution that I'm working on is I did buy an external display for the media server setup, and surprisingly, it had a USB-C port on it, but it is only power out. It was not video in. So on it, I had to use a mini display port to standard display port cable that I bought on the internet. That works fine, but it came with a USB-C to USB-C cable. I'm going to try and replace the cable that came with the studio display with a different cable and see if that works.
Already.
But I don't know that it's going to. I mean, it's just kind of frustrating. It's like the studio display tries to take and then but passes it off onto the other display. I've changed all the displays. I've had the extended display on the bottom, on the left, on the right.
I think the problem is the adapter is not quite ready when the Mac starts up, so the Mac doesn't see it when you would like it to, and that's why it's not quite working the way you want it to.
Well, I'm suspecting, like I mentioned, possibly that the cable that came with the studio display might have a defect in it of some sort. I don't know. How would you determine that? Replace it.
Just replace it and see how it goes. Yeah.
Is I've forgotten now which OWC dock you said, but is there any chance of running any of your monitors off that dock?
That should have an HDMI output. And he's already got HDMI built in. So I would, if you're going to do something, I would use an adapter directly plugged in.
I didn't want to go that far. I wanted to try and stay as direct off of the main computer, the mini, as possible. But I'm willing and open to experiment with several things. I just, you know,
I would imagine if you could adapt the HDMI output to DisplayPort, that would probably be your best bet.
mhm.
And those adapters are all over Amazon. That shouldn't be a problem for you.
Yeah,
But
Yeah.
they're both digital, and the Mac prefers using it.
Yeah.
well, that's interesting because most of this we all have to learn by trial and error because the powers that be don't tell us what the optimum setup ought to be. It's they want to give us as much flexibility to mess it up that we can.
Right, so
It does seem like that way. Seem that way
It
at times,
does a
doesn't
little
it?
bit.
Uh,
So I'm actually yesterday or Wednesday when I was down at the Genius Bar in Nanuet for this hard drive failure issue that we got resolved. Um, anyway, the fellow also discussed the monitor thing, and he gave me some ideas on what to search on. But while I was there, I went ahead and picked up the new AirPod Pro 2s for myself. I've only got them out of the box and made sure they were charged up. I haven't even had time to get them configured.
did you take advantage of that $168 deal?
No, don't know
Oh.
what that is.
Well, it's I don't know if it even applies anymore, but Amazon was selling them for a couple of days for $168.
Nah, I just bought them at the Apple store while I was there.
Okay.
Eh,
it's not a bad option. Not a bad option.
I'm
Any-
also the interesting in listening to your earlier presentation about the iPhone 16s. I've got my wife and I have 12s. Those were I upgraded to those from 8s. So that's 4 years or 4 versions. I think maybe I'm ready to upgrade to the 16s.
Cool.
I don't think you'll regret it. Because, well, coming from the 12s, I promise you won't regret it because the cameras are better. I mean, everything is better. No doubt about that. So I had a project I did for my former employer I guess a couple years ago. And I always took photos of our events. And of course, the iPhone is what you had. And so they asked me to put together sort of a retrospect. And it was quite interesting to see the quality of photos improve from the iPhone over time. Because at the moment you thought, well, that's great. You didn't realize just how much better each generation was getting to, up to and including the present. So, if you look back at your old photos, they look great. And of course, they were taken with the camera you had, the iPhone. But those photos have gotten so much better and so much bigger to part of our other discussion. So
Yeah,
I don't
well,
know I don't know how much of a priority photography is for you.
no, not that much. Actually, part of the difference in iPhone capabilities became apparent to me because when we had our 8s, I had just an 8. My wife had an 8 plus, and the difference in what the 8 plus could do for photos
Mm-hmm.
just convinced me that. But then when we went up to 12s, we just decided to do standard phones.
Yeah.
So
That's the thing. There's some pieces of hardware I think that it really does benefit you to upgrade consistently. There are others that you can make do with and drag it out. But
although I wonder whether these 16s could take the photos that I took with my first digital camera. I had a Sure Shot G3, I think it was now, and I bought it and my first laptop, and then went to a niece's wedding in San Diego. and flew from Seattle down to San Diego. And my wife told me, you can only take one of your new toys with you on this trip. So I took the camera and I took photos out of the airplane window, flying at 30,000 feet, of my wife's hometown of the Dalles, Oregon, and of my hometown of Lakeview, Oregon, that's down on the southern Oregon border. And I can actually take those photos doing a full optical zoom through the airplane window. And I can zoom in on that photo and identify my grandmother's house.
Huh.
Wow.
And I don't know whether that could be done with an iPhone, even today.
Anybody here ever use an Apple QuickTake?
Oh, sure. Sure, that was cool stuff back then.
Oh, yeah.
Of course, it was the size of a postage stamp, but other than that,
The pictures, yeah, it wasn't very good.
yeah, yeah. But hey, that just goes to it. We start with one thing, and they just keep getting incrementally better, and pretty soon you've got what we now have. We can hold in our hands.
Well, you held it in your hands.
Well, you don't. You know what I mean.
It was the two-fisted camera.
About what year was that, Bradley, for the quick takes?
Oh, God. Give me a moment. I'll look it up.
I wasn't anywhere.
1994.
And I was struggling to justify spending money on some of the computers that I did have, considering my first Mac was given to me by my daughter when she brought it home from college in the 80s. And it had a floppy disk drive in it and no hard drive. And after 45 minutes of disk swapping between a system disk and an app disk, I was ready to drop kick that computer. I still have it.
So let's take this in the other direction. Does anybody here have a Vision Pro?
Oh, you got one?
Jeffrey, you have a Vision Pro. Good for you. How do you find it?
A Vision
Pro. The Apple, the headset.
The goggles.
I thought you were saying Vision Problem.
Oh.
Well,
Rick, is that a Vision? Are you doing Vision Problem or Pro?
Yeah, Vision Problem.
Oh, okay. Have any of you done the demos?
No. In fact, when I answered the survey that came back from my visit to the Apple store Wednesday afternoon, I bought the AirPods and then I waited for my Genius Bar appointment. I was there half hour early and they said, no, you have to wait until just 5 minutes before your appointment to check in. We're not going to take you early. So I got to do a lot of shopping, but I got a survey to answer questions about the salesperson. And then it said, okay, you've answered these 3 quick questions. If you want to answer a few more questions, we'll take a little more of your time. And one of them was, did anybody ask you to demo the Vision Pro? Nobody in the store asked me to do anything while I was there. I wonder if the store is going to appreciate the feedback they got from me.
Well, it's definitely a soft sell.
Yeah. And listen, I would say that's your homework between now and whenever I get to talk to you all again is go do the demo. The demo is worth doing. Even, I mean, if you wear glasses, they can approximate what you'd need to buy as far as the lenses go. But the demo will make you sit up and take notice and recognize that, the future is going to go in another direction.
Yeah. I don't know. It was a strange day at this store because everything seemed so slow. All they were doing was as stacking people up at the phones who wanted to buy phones and everything else. It was like they really didn't have time for anything else.
Yeah. Well, if you make an appointment to do it, I mean, I'm pretty sure you could still make specific appointments.
Yes.
And that way they'll have to show it to you. But it is, because I took my girlfriend with me when I went for mine, and she really didn't have any interest in it until she experienced it, and then she understood what all the hype was about. Now, whether it's worth the money to any of us right now, I have not invested in one because I haven't found that exact productivity use that I can't do something reasonably the same with my Macs.
It needs that killer app.
Well, Brad, that's kind of the tough thing, because the killer app, I think, for this device is going to be different for everyone. I mean, right now, for the video enthusiasts, the killer app is the video, is the device. I mean, because and you got to listen to Eric and Marty talk about it on their podcast, but you get the best seat in the house. You get that prime seat in the movie theater every single time you put it on. As opposed
no question, but is it worth $3,500 to start, and probably more?
To some people it is. And I know Eric, for a while, in fact, I don't even know if he's still doing it, but he went in with two friends, and then they took turns, using it for every week or every third week, I guess, to get a feel for it and see. And then eventually one of them, I know, stepped away and bought their own because it was worth it. And that sounds like a lot of money, but then think about your home theater setup and what it has been in the past and what you've spent on that. I'm not going to confess to anything, but over the years, I've spent a ridiculous amount. And this one gives me the best seat in the house. It gives me the best sound right there. And I can take it with me on an airplane. So I bring it up just because I want the killer productivity app for what I do, and I haven't found it yet. Doesn't mean it's not out there. Doesn't mean it's not coming. It's just not quite there yet. But if it was there, I would have no qualms about spending that money. As it is, I'm budgeting that money for an M4 laptop for the moment.
Which laptop? Are you interested in the MacBook Pros, which are likely to be released very soon, or MacBook Air, which is likely to be considerably later?
If I do a laptop, it would be the MacBook Pro. But my job situation recently changed. Well, not recently, about a year and a half ago, and so I'm not don't have the need to be quite as mobile as I did before. So an M4 studio might make as much sense as anything. So I'm open at this stage, but I think that's because of Apple Intelligence. That's going to be the time for me to do the upgrade. But that's me.
It could be 3 weeks from now.
Yeah. Oh, I know. I know right where the money is, which account it's sitting in, waiting for me.
It's earmarked.
Yes, exactly.
All right. Well, let me ask, if you don't mind mentioning, what configuration is most appealing to you?
That's a really interesting question. And in fact, it brings up something that I probably should mention. Because to drive all the monitors back here, I had to jump through a bunch of hoops to make sure everything worked. And things seem to be a little inconsistent right now with information as to how many monitors you can drive through HDMI and DisplayPort and all through some of the newer Macs. So the one thing that seems to be for certain is the studios will drive a whole lot of monitors.
Yeah.
Some of the other laptops, maybe not so much.
Well, if you have a DisplayLink adapter or a dock that includes DisplayLink, you can drive perhaps a lot more than you might have been led to believe.
Right. Exactly. And that's one of the damnable parts about it, is trying to, because I don't want to buy the machine and then find I can't drive all my monitors. So I'm going to have to do some homework after everything comes out and just confirm that, it can support them.
Well, they're
Um,
saying that there's a new controller for the dual layer OLED in the iPad Pro. Presumably, that will lend itself towards some improvements in monitor support for the M4 family. We don't really know what will be in M4 Pro, M4 Max based laptops, but one can only hope that that might be somehow a step better than what we're seeing now with M3 based models.
but you just said it, we don't know. And so that's
Right.
why I can't give you a good definitive answer. I'm going to have to evaluate which machines can do what that suit me.
Presumably the M4 Max will, but possibly the Pro will. But of course, the Max would be more expensive than a Pro version, but you might find you want the Max anyway. Very often the Pro-based model has a bit more limited memory, and you might have to bump up to the Max version anyway. So you might be killing two birds with one stone by getting a Max-based solution, in
Right.
terms of more memory and the more monitor support.
Yeah. Well, the same. I love the minis, but they can't do everything I want them to do. So I have to look at the studios.
Right.
And there's a significant price difference there. And
Well, not
right now,
necessarily. If you outfit a Mac Mini with M2 Pro now, with a decent amount of memory and storage, it's actually $100 more if you also do the 10 gigabit Ethernet than the combo Mac Studio, which would be, of course, Max based, not just Pro based. So if you nicely outfit a model, you're probably better off with a Max based Studio than a Pro based Mini. Boy, that's a
yeah, yeah. But we're that's an M2. And so
well,
now,
unfortunately, they're behind.
Yeah.
The rumor is that they'll be upgrading the minis first. The Studio, more like May of next year, which is
Yeah.
rather unfortunate because I've got probably more clients interested in Studios than minis.
And here we go back to sort of what we started with. These things are so powerful compared to the Intel Macs that I was running, and I know some of you are still running, that it's borderline unbelievable. I mean,
Mhm.
by using certain video software that just needs to grind for a few hours, I can get the fans to come on, but I have to work at it.
Really, I've done
before,
benchmarks and run, let's say, Topaz video for hours, and it doesn't make a sound that well. Okay, I have a M1 Mini,
okay,
but it definitely never makes a noise at all. It's got a
yeah,
fan, and I can see the speed. It just it's never doing anything.
right. Whereas my old Intel,
Oh, it definitely
my
would have, sure.
my high-end Intel sounded, like a jet engine.
Sure.
Just as soon as, and you mentioned Topaz Video, that's exactly the one I'm thinking about. I used to render on that and go to sleep and hope it would be done in the morning. And now with the new, just with the M1, I do it in a few hours.
Right.
And so if the M3s are going to be faster, presumably the M4s will be faster yet.
Well, they're saying
So,
about 25% faster than an M3 is or was. Well, whatever.
yeah. So, you try to figure out the math, and I've never been, with all due respect, I've never really been impressed with benchmarks. They're benchmarks, but I want to see what it does, how it performs for me with what I do. And that's where you say, then you got to look in the mirror and say, am I just buying a Ferrari to have a Ferrari, or do I really have a need for a Ferrari?
Sometimes you don't need a Ferrari, but you want a Ferrari.
Sure. Well, yeah.
You want to get that ice cream really fast,
Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that. But no, seriously, go and do the Vision Pro demo. It won't cost you anything except a few minutes. And I think you'll start to understand what all the hype and all the excitement is about for the people that have them.
Okay, here's a good question. You've got the 16, which can now shoot not only spatial video, but spatial audio. Have you shot any of those in order for playback on a Vision Pro?
I have not. I know Eric and Marty have, and they tell me that it's amazing. In fact, they really have super high praise for the utilities that will take your existing photos and make them spatial.
Oh, is that right? I didn't
yeah.
even know that such existed. Like I say,
Yeah.
I don't have a Vision Pro, so I haven't looked into that.
Right. But I can tell you this, when you go and do the demo, and again, I don't want to give away too much, but you will experience spatial video and what it means. And it means, if it, say this, it feels like you are right there. No matter which part of the demo you're in, you're right there in the room or in nature or wherever that you happen to be.
Did you hear that news recently? I think it was like yesterday, where Apple's got some new movie. It's not out yet, but it will be out in the near future.
Yeah,
specifically designed for the Vision Pro.
I think it just came out because we were talking about it last night. That it's a World War II submarine thing that lasts about 17 minutes, but they say it is just absolutely incredible that you are there in the submarine.
Mm-hmm.
And they were talking about some of the actual. This is going to be a whole new way of. I'm sorry, we're on track and off track, but I'll go this far. Doing these spatial videos is a whole nother thing. If from no other standpoint than the standpoint of lighting, because with the spatial videos, you can look left, you can look right, you can look up, you can look down, you can see everything that's going on around you. Well, whereas before, I mean, right now I'm talking to you, I've got two lights sitting up there that you'll never see. But if you're doing spatial video, you can't have the lighting rig up there. It has to be somewhere else, or they have to work around it with ambient light. So this is going to be a whole new way of doing video, and it's probably the reason people are experimenting with things, trying to figure out how best to do this, because it's not like it's ever been before.
Have you seen? Well, you've probably seen a lot of videos where you see people using those ring lights. And of course, they may have glasses, and all you see is the rings and reflected in their glasses. Exactly. Very annoying. So, avoiding that kind of problem. Of course, you want anti-reflective lens treatment to avoid that in the first place. Not everybody has that, but apparently for those spatial videos, you don't want ring lights. You want your basic good old square, LED matrix type lighting, which seems to be better for that purpose to avoid shadows.
Right. But if you're shooting spatial video, if you're, the commercial video, I mean, look, if I'm shooting with my iPhone, obviously I'm just shooting, what's in front of me, and as much as I want, if I want to do this much of pan, it'll capture that. But if you're talking about a commercial production like this, and I haven't seen it yet, but the submarine video is, I mean, then you're going to be able to turn around and look at the guy behind you firing the torpedoes, or the guy in front of you, that's manning the radar set.
Right.
So trust me, it is worth the time. If you don't come away just really blown away, you may not be ready to invest the money, but I think you're going to be excited over what you see.
I'd like to see it behind the scenes, how they shot it.
Yes, I'm hoping that we will get to see some of that.
There isn't actually behind the scenes.
Oh,
there's a making of video. I put the link in the chat.
Oh, cool. Yes. Thank you.
Oh, very cool.
Oh, shoot. I'm missing half the chat. I'm sorry.
Tom Shim has his hand up and has had it up for a while, folks.
His shoulder's getting sore.
Rick, keep us straight.
I lost feeling in my fingers.
Sorry.
Ask away, Tom.
So I did the video. I think most of us done not the video. Most of us
have
done the demo. And I think we were all blown away, but I think we're also blown away about the wonderful price tag. So it's obviously, hopefully going to go down. The only thing is is it going to stick around long enough
No, you
for
cannot.
it to go down? I'm sorry. Whoops, still there?
Yeah, go
we're
ahead,
here.
Tom.
Oh, okay. So I was going to say whether it's going to be enough to A, justify the price, and B, go beyond the wow factor, because there's only so much wow you can take, and then have to go down and do some work. Which I think there's potential for that. But I will say it is very impressive. In fact, when I was doing the demo, I was doing really well with all the new paradigms, but then I kind of blacked out when Alicia Keys was singing to me personally.
Anything you want to
And
confess to?
it really did look like you were in that studio and she was singing to you. So that was kind of wild.
Yeah, and do you agree with me that the degree to which the presence is there? I mean, it's one thing if I go get up 6 inches away from my TV screen and Alicia Keys is singing. It's a whole nother experience inside the Vision Pro.
Oh yeah, it's 3-dimensional, and it's immersive in the sense that it's 360 degrees in every direction, right? So I wouldn't think that would make that much of a difference, but I do think the 3D plus the immersiveness of it does. Like, it's not 3D like 3D has been on movies and television, where it looks like a diorama, where everyone's flat and you have different planes. This really looks like it's infinite gradations of 3D.
And
So
wait
I
till you
think
get
that
an
also makes a
immersive
difference.
commercial.
Yeah.
Had to bring that up, didn't you? Yeah.
Sorry. Could be an Apple commercial.
Well, folks, you tell me. I do not want to wear out my welcome. This has been a great discussion. We've sure covered a lot of ground. Is there anything else I can answer for you or do for you at this point?
Mind if I ask you a question, Chuck, about the iPhone 16?
Sure.
I was reading people's reviews about it, and they kept finding, they kept pressing the oh God, what's the name of the stupid new thing there? The camera control.
Right.
When they're holding it, they kept, if they're holding it, like this, that's just where the button is, and they're finding they were hitting it accidentally, which they didn't like. Of course, it depends on if you're a righty or a lefty. I presume your situation might be slightly different than a right-handed person. But they also found that when they were using it, it required a relatively deft touch to actually get that half press. And so they found they were pressing it too hard and then moving the camera, physically when pushing the button. And they've said, well, that means now all my pictures are blurry because I'm moving the camera. And they said they wish they didn't have the camera control, to be honest. Just the regular pushing touching the screen was actually better for having a nice stable picture. So obviously you've only had it for a relatively short amount of time. So it's perhaps not fair to ask, how's your experience with actually using it? But nevertheless, how's it worked for you?
It's a very fair question, Brad, and I agree. It takes
practice.
It takes practice. To just push it down just enough to get it to trigger, the control part, and then then you can do it. But look, you don't have to do that. You can still tap the screen and take the picture.
Mm-hmm.
If you never want to touch that camera control, everything is still available to you.
Can you shut it off and have it ignored?
That's a fair question, and I don't know. It never even occurred to me to want to turn it off. So I don't know if I can turn off. But again, if I'm taking the picture and
but let's say you're not taking a picture, you're just trying to do something else. Does it get in your way and start switching to the camera mode in the middle of whatever you're trying to do?
No, because normally, as I said earlier, I'm left-handed, so I would completely usually. Here, tell you what, I forget. This particular case has a lens protector, so I normally, this is the way I would hold it. The camera control button is down here, whereas if you do it the way right-handers do, it would usually be up here.
Yeah.
Okay. But that said, I guess maybe theoretically, I guess my finger could slip in there because right now I'm using it just like I would the 15.
Well, let's say you're looking at your email and it's now portrait, not landscape.
Okay.
Would you find you might be hitting that button accidentally?
I guess if I tried, but I still feel like, because I just did it, I still feel like I have to. There's no reason I should be pushing on that button that much.
Okay. Because people were saying they had to hold it rather funny to avoid the button.
Yeah.
Again, being a lefty, you probably have a somewhat different experience than, you'll forgive me, the majority of people who are right-handed.
Yeah. Oh no. That's a very fair statement, a very fair possibility. There's one other possibility too, and that is, I'm a case user, so I always have my phone in a case.
Why is that? Yeah.
Yeah, well, that's the way I feel about it, because I want to get the best return, the trade-in value for it. But that said, so maybe if this was naked, I might feel a little bit different, because my finger might slide down onto that button a little easier than it does now in a case.
Is yours the kind that have the, shall we say, the notch, the cutout, or do you have something that actually covers the physical button?
No, mine.
Control?
This is a here. Let's see. This, I don't know if I can.
You've got the notch. Yeah.
I've got a notch. This is a speaking case, and I've got the notch. So I'm right down to the bare button.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's
because there's some other cases that have recently come out that actually have a physical, let's call it a button that goes over the camera control, and it translates what you're doing to the physical button. So it offers a certain amount of protection, whereas that, you'll forgive me, lacks that in that area.
Yeah, no, you're right. And I always buy a speaking case first out, because they're the ones that have the best cases, in my opinion, out first. And then I look around and see. So at some point I will try somebody else's that have that cover.
Mm-hmm.
But I can't see how that cover doesn't just aggravate the issue of being able to do for lack of a better phrase, the half push.
Right.
But I will reserve judgment until I get my hands on one.
There's some nice videos out there that, or other articles where they talk about different iPhone 16 series cases, and some have the notch and some have an actual, for lack of a better word, device over that translates and may in fact be, superior. Every case has a compromise. So, I found it rather interesting reading these different reviews, what people are saying about the different cases that, are good or not so good.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely.
But anything's returnable, so you could try a few and see what works well for you.
And the other thing is, let's remember that nobody likes change, and this is another change. And so the things, how many iterations have we gone through with the past phones where they made a change and it's like, oh, I hate this. How many people hated the fact that they changed the scrolling direction, and they wanted to change it back?
Well, it's easily fixed.
Yeah. But not just that, but if you just adopted it for, a week, it didn't take me a week to finally just retrain myself that, okay, now it's going to work this way. But nobody wants to go through that little bit of pain.
Well, okay, here's a perfectly good example about that. How many people, when they first get their Mac, turn on the Finder preference to show their hard drive on the desktop? Because that's the way Macs have worked, God knows, for 40 years. And it's off by default. It's a different way of working, a different way of thinking. You could work that way, just people don't want to. They're used to what they're used to.
Sure. I see Michael's had his hand up for a while. Michael, hope the blood hasn't run out of your hand.
So I'm good. I just wanted to ask, we were speaking before about the Final Cut. They removed the option to burn out right to a disk. And then
I
understand.
mentioned that, yeah.
Oh, okay, yeah. Thank you, Bradley. And understanding that, what happens next? Is there an option? Do you have to go with Premiere or I don't know, Blackmagic, DaVinci? I don't. What happens next? I don't understand.
The theory is if you still need to burn an optical disc and you've updated to the latest, well, couple of iterations of Final Cut Pro, is you'd export your project to a file of some sort and have some other third-party utility burn that to DVD. There are several DVD burning programs out there.
Oh, okay. Right. Well,
At the end of the day, there's very little you're not going to be able to do. You may have to jump through a few extra hoops to do it, but that you balance that against, and this sort of goes back to our earlier discussion of printing. You know, you have to balance that out against the need or the applicability. So you'll be always able to find a way to figure it out. You know,
Paraphrase Spock from Star Trek: the needs of the many outweigh the needs of the few.
or the one.
That's right.
Nice.
I'm just going to throw in my 2 cents on something.
Please.
About that button. On my DSLR and mirrorless cameras, I have gotten away from the half press thing. I use a thing called back button focus. I don't know if anybody else knows what I'm talking about, but there's a button on the back of most higher end DSLRs and mirrorless cameras where you can press a button to either lock in focus or lock in the other one, I guess, is f-stop.
Aperture priority, yeah.
And it's going to take me a while to get used to, like a half press because I have my eye on a 16. I've got a 13 right now, but for the camera, basically, is what I'm looking at. But it's going to take me a while to get used to that because there is no way to back button focus on an iPhone. So it's a case of going backwards in my learning how to use a camera. I mean, everybody starts that way with the half press thing, but the back button focus is something that a great many photographers use, and a lot of pros use too.
Well, you know, there are other camera apps that you could make use of, like Halide, for argument's sake, that might have more functionality, more to your liking. You don't have to use Apple software.
Yeah,
but you do have to use the hardware that you've got right next to your finger when you're up there shooting.
Well, depending on which app you invoke, I suppose.
Well,
I
and
don't know
also
any of them that change.
Yeah, and that's and look, the phone's only been out for so long. Whether Apple will open up that
API.
camera button to allow it to do different things. I mean, if I remember correctly, there was a bit of surprise that Halide was even able to access that the native functions of that button, because they thought that was going to be an Apple only thing, and Apple did leave its options open so they could access it. So I am not familiar with this, Rick, but now I'm going to have to do some work on it, or research on it.
We'll get back to you on that.
Just
There may
Google.
be a solution.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But
If you just Google back button focus, you'll get probably tons of returns on that from a whole bunch of pro photographers.
Yeah, that's exactly. Well, and
but it's a
videos
case,
all over the place.
It's a case of focus and recompose. A lot of times if you're doing the half press and then you recompose, your focus may change, and if your camera isn't set up correctly, it won't refocus. You have to let go of the shutter button and then half press it again, and that's one of the things that creates a lot of problems in the, overall focus and recompose kind of thing. So anyway, that's just my 2 cents of the difference between the way I shoot with my mirrorless and the way I'm going to have to shoot with a new iPhone camera.
Well, and I wonder if through the use of shortcuts and some of the other things that you might be able to assign a back tap to it that would accomplish the same thing.
Yeah, I suppose there's a possibility there. Yeah.
So
interesting.
Yeah, I mean,
as you say, it's out. It's out so recently that I would imagine a lot of photographers haven't had a lot of time to do a lot of testing or rewriting software or what have you, or getting permission from Apple to access things like the back tap or what have you.
Yeah. That's the beauty of these things. There's so much flexibility being built into them that if you take the time, the odds are you can probably get a lot of what you want to get done.
It's called back focus. What was that name again? I'm sorry.
Back button focus.
Oh, sorry.
On Chuck, you can adjust the pressure on your lightly press for the camera control. You can adjust the amount of pressure needed or turn that off completely.
Okay. So there's the answer to that question.
I put the link to that description in the chat as well.
Okay, and I'm throwing a quick article in just for those who don't want to bother to Google it. That's the first article I popped up on the back button focus. So, yeah, it's. Does anybody else get excited over just the fact that there's so much to learn here?
Yeah.
Do you guys see it as a burden, or do you see it as something that you want to dig into?
A little bit of both, I'd say.
Yeah. Jeffrey just said challenge, and yeah, that's a good word, but the good kind of challenge. At least I hope so.
Yeah.
Michael, there's your handout.
Finding the right sources to guide you.
Yes.
The problem is, the Mac and the iPhone were always about making life simpler. So.
Yeah, that's true. But on the other hand, it's the problem we have with the Mac OS right now. And again, we alluded to this earlier. We all want to do so much more with it. If we just took the stock Mac and didn't say, well, I really want this, you can do so much with it. But we all get selfish and we all want something our way. And so, yes, I want that. So now you have to go and learn how to adjust it to get that.
Chuck,
yes.
That's one of the purposes of LIMAC is that every few months we run an app presentation where we take a topic and people will give demos of an app that they use that does well. And we compare the apps so that we can see, let's say, on note-taking apps or other apps, what works. And people can make their choices. That's one of the purposes of LIMAC.
That's great because you're right. Even if you're not getting together in person, you get together and share some of this stuff virtually. And, you learn what somebody else is doing that maybe you want to do. So I applaud you because user groups have gone through an evolution. It's not always one that has a very bright future, unfortunately, but it's people like you all that do things like that share and get together and expand the knowledge of each other that is going to carry yours into the future.
Hopefully.
Okay.
Well, we've always done a variation of show and tell, you might say.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's just a little bit
expanding people's horizons and exposing them to stuff they may not see. If you went to, let's say, an Apple store, they're more about problem solving than showing you new things. They used to have these nice lessons that would, teach you this, that, and the other. And unfortunately, not so much anymore.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, but again, I mean, just like with what has happened to user groups, so many things moved online and groups didn't adapt. And there's so many now where we were just talking about this the other day. You used to have to go to a user group to have access to a shareware library of any quality. Now it's just a quick Google search and click and it's there. And same with training. YouTube has an ungodly amount of training. Some of it's really great, some of it not so much. And there's some pay-for options out there. I'm thinking specifically of Screencasts Online that have incredibly high quality. You have to pay for it, but you pay for what you get. And so, and they're I mean, I'm picking on just one. There's several out there that I would highly recommend, if you really are serious about learning something. And of course, all the Take Control books that those folks produce are amazing reference materials that, I can't recommend highly enough.
I think they're great. You know what's really nice about Take Control? They have something that Apple loves to avoid. There's a chapter nearly at the beginning of the book, let's say Take Control of Sequoia or Sonoma or whatever it is. There's a chapter that says this is what Apple dropped from the new operating system. They like to talk about what's new, they've added. They never like talking about what they took away. But sometimes that's rather important.
Absolutely. So,
well, we have a number of other things to do this evening before we all turn into pumpkins. And we should probably let Chuck go so we can do those couple of things that we have to do. Thank you very much, Chuck. It was all over the place, but a great presentation and discussion. And, once again, don't be a stranger. We'll call you back.
Well, thank you. I really appreciate it. I'm sorry that I think there were a couple of times I had to cancel out on you because business travel just got in the way, and those are the kind of things that you don't always know are going to happen until a week or 10 days ahead of time. Sometimes 3 or 4 days. So, but it's always a blast. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Chuck.
And
we appreciate you being with us.
Yeah, the only thing I'm a little concerned with what you might be wanting to do after I leave, but maybe it's better I don't know. So
your name, I'm sorry, your name will not come up. It's not like we're going to start throwing spears or anything, but a couple of little minor, I'd say, I guess maybe not like bookkeeping, but little things.
All right. Well, I will assume that's the case. Just don't nominate me for office for anything, please. You all have a great evening. Thanks so much for having me.
You too, Chuck. Thank you so much.
Thanks.
Stay
Take
healthy.
care.
Be well.
Thank you.
So long.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Visit MacVoices.com for show notes and to connect with Chuck on social media. Get involved in our Facebook group or like our Facebook page, and get more out of your Apple tech with MacVoices Magazine, free on Flipboard and on the web. And if you find value in it all, consider supporting us through either our Patreon campaign at patreon.com/MacVoices or by making a one-time donation via the PayPal link on our front page and in the show notes of each episode. You will join these fine people who help bring you Mac Voices. Advertising handled by Backbeat Media at backbeatmedia.com. Bandwidth provided by CashFly at cashfly.com.